Australians living with disabilities say they are facing humiliating treatment at airports, with reports of people forced to use garbage lifts, being carried onto flights by loved ones or suffering injuries from falls. Writer Zoe Simmons has called for a total overhaul of how people with disabilities are handled at airports after a string of appalling and dehumanising incidents. The Sydney woman, 27, who lives with fibromyalgia, has been approached by dozens of people with disabilities after 9 News. .com.au reported her wheelchair was damaged by Qantas in September. Read more. Qantas apologizes after initially refusing to cover cost of woman's wheelchair left broken after flight. Do you have a story? Contact reporter Joe Atanasio on Jatanasio at 9. Qantas agreed to compensate Simmons for the brake damage, which put her at risk of injury, after initially telling her it was minor and that she would not be reimbursed. The airline apologized when contacted by 9news.com.au, but Simmons said enough is enough, and that the issue spreads far wider than one incident with a single carrier. It's frustrating as hell, Simmons told 9news.com.au, being disabled and having limited energy makes everything so much harder. But what enrages me the most is that incidents like this are huge issues that affect so many people and we don't talk about it. From being turned away from flights to rejected loo breaks, dehumanizing airport accounts. Serena Ovens is the CEO of the Physical Disability Council of NSW, PDCN, and said Simmons is right. She's heard of easily hundreds of similar reports of humiliating treatment at airports, which is causing people with disabilities to simply avoid air travel altogether, meaning they are missing out on experiences they should equally be able to have. Pretty much every single wheelchair user I know, which is significant numbers, could tell you about their incredibly varied experiences at airports, Ovens told 9 News. .com.au, read more. Worst in 30 years, NSW set for ravaging from double-sized mosquitoes. Airports and airport services are very poor. In fact, we would say one of the poorest areas of disability inclusion that we deal with across all areas of life. The issue is not isolated to Australia, with Simmons passing on shocking and dangerous incidents people in her community have come forward with. This is a global issue with airlines all around the world, she said. One of my friends was on a flight and ended up getting a concussion after falling from an aisle chair, a small wheelchair used to get passengers to seats on planes. I have another friend who was stranded for days overseas without their wheelchair, and another forced to be carried in a garbage lift after a flight as there were no lifts available. A woman also approached Simmons after she had to carry her husband on and off a plane as the airport had no ramps. This is obviously very dangerous, the Sydney disability advocate said. It is not okay and we deserve better. 1 in 6 Australians have a disability. That's about 4.4 million people, or 18% of the population, according to the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. Airports can be triggering places for many people with different types of disabilities given the challenges some face checking in, going through security and getting on or off a plane. But Ovens said wheelchair users have it particularly tough. Read more. Grocery delivery service Boli announces its closure in Australia. Chairs are damaged by airlines, some are forced to use ones that aren't appropriate for their needs and others have been rejected from flights last minute due to overcrowding, Ovens explained. People are told after they arrive at the airport that there are too many wheelchair users on the plane already so they can't fly, Ovens said. In one case, a person competing in an international sporting event was turned away on the day as they were told the flight had too many power wheelchairs on board. They wouldn't allow it. It's completely ridiculous as they would have known well in advance what numbers to expect, Ovens said. We've had people who needed to go to the bathroom and they can't get the assistance of airline stewards, so they're told to wait. It's dehumanizing and deeply humiliating for them to deal with that. Just weeks ago, a Queensland woman said she felt forced to crawl down the aisle of a plane to get to her wheelchair after being told she'd have to pay to get assistance off the flight. Jetstar later apologized, saying the incident was the result of a miscommunication. Days earlier, journalist Tracy Spicer got stuck outside Sydney Airport when both her hire car driver and Virgin Australia staff refused to push her wheelchair inside. She suffers extreme fatigue after contracting long COVID, which she told 9 News. Com.au had left her feeling like a shadow of her former self. The Virgin Australia staff member confirmed they are not supposed to leave the terminal, and drivers are not supposed to wheel people in, so what can we do? Spicer wrote on Twitter. Simmons had a similar incident and had to carry her luggage on her lap. The thing is, people just don't always have the energy to fight, because it does take a lot of energy, she said. The trolls say I am just attention seeking. What I'd say to them is yeah, actually, I am seeking attention, for a very important cause. There needs to be stricter regulation. The PDCN work with people with physical disabilities and advocate for long-term changes to remove barriers and address discriminatory practices. Ovens has argued that now is the time for change, citing a convoluted process for those impacted to take up their individual fights. There needs to be much stricter and much more clear regulation around what Australian airlines need to do for people with disability, she said. Public transport regulations should include airlines, however, they seem to be absolved from any of this. There are basic regulations, and there's the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities that they should be abiding by. She said the only way people with a disability can deal with their issues is through the Human Rights Commission. They look at conciliation, but there are no strict guidelines. Leading Australian airlines Qantas, Jetstar and Virgin Australia were approached about their procedures supporting the travel of people with disabilities. All said their processes are regularly reviewed in consultation with disability organizations. We welcome thousands of passengers who require specific assistance on board our aircraft every year, a Qantas spokesperson said. We have a dedicated team who work with these passengers, and we are always looking at ways we can make sure everyone has a smooth and comfortable journey with us. Jetstar said its top priority is providing a safe, comfortable and affordable travel experience to all our customers, including those requiring specific assistance. Virgin Australia said it has a dedicated team to support people with disabilities through airports.